The first time a police officer said my name out loud, it didn't sound like me. It sounded like someone else, someone older, someone reckless, someone who knew what they were doing. "Ava Morgan?" the woman asked, standing in the doorway of my little rented room in Birmingham, her badge catching the hallway light. Behind her was a man holding a folder, the kind you only see in court dramas. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like my body forgot to breathe. "Yes," I said, because what else could I say? I remember thinking, stupidly, that maybe Nan had fallen, or Mum's old hospital bills had resurfaced, or someone had found my dad and decided I was responsible for him. The officer didn't come in. She didn't need to. She just looked at me like she was already tired. "We need to speak with you about a series of financial applications made in your name," she said. "It relates to suspected fraud." I laughed once, a sharp little noise, because it was either that or cry. "That's not possible." The man with the folder opened it and flicked to a page like he'd done it 100 times. "We have documents," he said, and the way he said documents made it feel like a verdict. He read out things that didn't match my life at all. 2 credit cards, a phone contract, a mail order account, a car finance application, addresses I recognized but hadn't lived at since I was 14. One of them was my Nan's. One of them was my Uncle Darren's. My throat went dry. "I've never—" I started, then stopped, because my mind was racing ahead, trying to build a bridge between what they were saying and what I knew. The officer's face softened, just a fraction. "We're not here to arrest you," she said. "Not today. But you need to understand the seriousness. There's an unpaid balance. There are defaults. There may be a county court judgment in progress. We need your statement." My hands were shaking, and I hated that they could see it. I hated even more that the first person I thought to call wasn't a lawyer or the police or the bank. It was my uncle. Because for most of my life, Darren was the one who handled things. Darren was the one who said, "Leave it with me, love." Darren was the one who stood up at Mum's funeral and promised me, in front of everyone, that I'd never have to worry about a thing. And in that hallway, with a fraud investigation suddenly wrapped around my name like a chain, I realized something cold and heavy. The only way my name was on those documents was if someone close had put it there, someone who knew my date of birth, my national insurance number, my old addresses, the name of my first primary school, the exact way my signature looped when I was nervous, someone who could look me in the eye afterwards and act like nothing had happened. When the officers finally left, they gave me a reference number and a list of steps. Get my credit file, contact lenders, report to action fraud, don't ignore letters, keep everything. "Keep everything," the woman repeated, like she could see my life had been built on trusting people with tidy voices. I locked my door, slid down it, and just sat on the carpet with my phone in my hand. Darren answered on the second ring, bright as sunshine. "All right, kid. You okay?" I stared at the wall where I'd stuck a photo of Mum and me at Weston-super-Mare, her hair whipped by wind, both of us laughing like nothing could touch us. My voice came out small. The police came. A pause, not long, but long enough. "The police?" Darren asked, and it sounded like confusion, but it didn't sound like surprise. "They said there are accounts," I said. "In my name, debt, fraud." Another pause. Then his tone shifted into something smooth, comforting. "Listen, people do scams all the time. Don't panic. You probably got your details nicked somewhere. Those officers love to frighten young girls, make it sound worse." My skin prickled at young girls. Darren always did that when he wanted to remind me I was beneath him. "They said your address is on some of it," I said, forcing the words through. He laughed softly. "Well, you lived here, didn't you? Years ago. That doesn't mean anything." "Uncle Darren," I said, and my voice cracked on his name. Did you do this? The line went quiet. I could hear a television in the background, a laugh track, the fake warmth of it. Then he sighed, the way he always sighed when I disappointed him. Ava, he said gently, why would you even ask me that? Because my body already knew the answer. Because my chest felt tight in a way it hadn't felt since Mum's last week, when I could tell by the smell of the hospital room that everything was ending, even if nobody said it. I'm scared, I said. I don't have money. I'm at college. I can't. Listen, he cut in, voice firm now, the adult voice, the one the family listened to. Do not go telling people you don't know what you're talking about. You'll embarrass yourself. Let me sort it. I'll call someone. I know a bloke at the bank. That was Darren's favorite phrase. I know a bloke. Just forward me whatever letters you get, he said. And keep your mouth shut, all right? Don't make this bigger than it is. I hung up with my hand still shaking, and I felt this horrible split inside me. One part wanted to believe him because belief meant safety. Belief meant the world made sense. The other part, the part that had survived a childhood of listening for moods and footsteps and the exact tone of a door closing, whispered, he's already building the story. Because Darren didn't say, I'm coming over. He didn't say, let's check your credit file together. He didn't sound shocked. He sounded managing. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about how many times Darren had told me he was sorting my future. How, when I turned 18, he'd taken me for a cheap meal and raised his glass like it was a toast. Time to build your credit, he'd said, like he was handing me a gift. No one teaches you this stuff, Ava, but I will. I'd felt proud, chosen, like I wasn't the charity case niece anymore, like I was an adult being invited into the adult world. He'd asked for my details then. Not in a sinister way, in a practical way. We'll set you up properly, he said. You'll thank me later. I gave him my national insurance number because he'd been in my life since I was 8, since Mum's depression started getting worse and Dad started vanishing in longer gaps. Darren was the one who picked me up from school. Darren was the one who fought the council when we were at risk of losing our flat. Darren was the one who told Mum, stern and patient, you need to get help, Sarah. He'd been the hero in our family story, the one with a job, a car, a steady girlfriend, the one who didn't fall apart. So when he said, let me teach you, I let him. Now, sitting on my carpet with the police reference number in my hand, I wondered how long he'd actually been using my name. Since I turned 18, or earlier. I opened my laptop and pulled up an Experian free trial because I didn't know what else to do. My hands were clumsy on the keyboard. When the report loaded, my mouth went numb. There were accounts I'd never seen. A credit card opened 2 months after my 18th birthday. Another account opened a month later. A phone contract I'd never held. A mail order line that screamed impulse buying, late fees, default, and the addresses linked to them made it worse. My Nan's, Darren's, an old flat on the edge of town that Darren had lived in years ago. A cold thought slipped in. He didn't just use my name. He used my life. He used places he knew I couldn't deny because they were real. I clicked into the details and saw something that made my vision blur. A missed payment marker in my name from before I'd even moved out for college. A payment history trail like a breadcrumb path. This wasn't a single mistake. This was a habit. I sat there staring at the screen until the dawn light changed the color of my curtains. When Sophie, my roommate, woke up and saw my face, she didn't ask what happened. She just put the kettle on and sat beside me. Show me, she said quietly. So I did. I showed her the names of the companies, the balances, the dates. Sophie's mouth tightened. This is identity theft, she said, like she'd just named a monster. You need to report it. I did, I said. Police came. Not them, Sophie said. Everything, banks, credit agencies, CIFIS, action fraud, citizens' advice, All of it. Today. The way she said today steadied me. Darren's voice lived in my head, telling me to keep my mouth shut, telling me he would sort it, telling me I was overreacting. Sophie's voice did the opposite. It gave me a spine. I spent the morning calling numbers off the credit report, waiting on hold, getting transferred, repeating, "I didn't apply for this," until the phrase felt like it had lost meaning. People were polite in that distant corporate way. They asked me security questions I couldn't answer because the accounts weren't mine. They told me they'd open an investigation. They told me I might still be liable if I couldn't prove it. One woman said, "Do you live at the address on file?" And when I said no, she asked, "Did you ever live there?" "Yes," I admitted, and I could almost hear her mental tick. Complication. By midday, I had a list on a notepad, companies to contact, forms to fill, evidence to gather, and one huge, ugly thing in the middle of it all. Who did it? Because if I told them it was Darren, I'd be detonating my own family. Darren didn't just live in our family. He was the pillar they leaned on. He paid for Nan's new boiler. He drove aunties to appointments. He was the one who helped Leah with her first car. And I already knew deep down what would happen if I accused him without perfect proof. They would not say, "Oh my God, Darren, how could you?" They would say, "Ava, are you sure? Darren would never." They would say, "Ava, you've been stressed, love." They would say, "Ava, you've always been dramatic." Because Darren had been laying that foundation for years. I saw it suddenly, like a picture snapping into focus. The little comments he made about me when I wasn't in the room that I used to think were harmless. "She's a lovely girl, but she's a bit impulsive. She's got her mum's streak." Ava's not great with money. He'd been building a version of me they would believe. A reckless Ava. A lying Ava. An Ava who couldn't be trusted over a respectable man like Darren. That evening, my Nan rang me, her voice tight. "Why have I had 2 letters come for you here about money?" My stomach turned. "What did they say?" "They had red writing on them," she said, like red ink was a curse. "Are you in trouble?" I swallowed. "Nan, I didn't do anything." She sighed heavily. "I spoke to Darren," she said. "He said you've been ordering silly things online. He said you're embarrassed and that's why you won't tell me." My hand clenched around the phone so hard my knuckles hurt. There it was. He hadn't even waited a day. He was already talking. "He said that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's worried about you," Nan insisted. "You should have come to us, Ava. Not let it get to this." A hot, dizzy anger rose in my chest. Not at Nan. Not really. At the way Darren could just arrange people's thoughts with a few gentle words. "I'm coming over tomorrow," I said, "and I'm bringing paperwork." Nan hesitated. "Darren said not to." "I'm coming," I repeated, and I heard my own stubbornness like a door slamming. That night, Darren texted me, "Don't upset your Nan. Let me handle it." I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I took a screenshot. It felt like the first stone I put in my pocket. The next day, I went to Nan's with a folder of printed credit reports and notes. Darren's car was already outside, parked neatly like he belonged there more than anyone. Inside, Nan was fluttery, anxious, offering tea too quickly. Darren sat at her table, calm as anything, in his work polo shirt, smelling faintly of aftershave. He smiled when he saw me, and it was the smile he used when he wanted to look like a good man. "There she is," he said warmly. "All right, kid?" I didn't sit. I put the folder down in front of him. "I want you to look at this," I said. He glanced at it, then at Nan, then back at me. "We can talk privately," he suggested, gentle. "No," I said. "I want Nan to hear." Nan's hands twisted in her lap. "Ava, love." "Nan, please," I said, and my voice shook, but I kept going. This says someone opened accounts in my name. It links to your address and his address. Darren didn't even flinch. He opened the folder like he was humoring a child. He flicked through the pages, nodding slowly. Right, he said. This is what I mean about scams. These reports get things wrong all the time. People can put any address down. But why your address? I demanded. He shrugged, smooth. Because I've lived in a few places. Maybe they found old details. Look, Ava, you've been stressed. You've been at college. You've probably signed up for something without reading it. I haven't, I said, and I could hear my own panic climbing. And even if I had, why would you tell Nan I've been ordering silly things online? Darren's eyes narrowed, just slightly. Because your Nan is worried, he said. And instead of calming her down, you've come in here waving papers like a solicitor. Nan's face crumpled. Darren said you might be struggling, she said softly to me. He said you didn't want me to know. Of course, Darren added, leaning back. Because you're proud, like your mum. The mention of mum hit like a slap. He used her like a weapon, like a reminder of how fragile life could be without him. I took a breath, then another. I forced myself to speak slower. I have a police reference number, I said. They came to my door. Nan's eyes widened. Darren's expression stayed calm, but I saw something in his jaw tighten. A small muscle flicker. He'd been counting on me being too scared to involve anyone official. You didn't tell me that, he said, voice quiet. You told me to keep my mouth shut, I replied. I told you not to panic, he corrected, still calm. There's a difference. I looked at Nan. Do you believe me? I asked, because I needed to know what I was fighting for. Nan's lips trembled. She looked between us like she was watching two cars speed toward each other. I don't know what to believe, she whispered. Darren reached across the table and patted Nan's hand, a performance of tenderness. Mags, don't let this stress you, he said. I'll sort it. Something in me snapped, not into screaming, into clarity. That was his whole trick. I'll sort it. And while everyone waited for him to sort it, he could move pieces around unseen. So I did the one thing I'd never done with Darren. I stood up to him without asking permission. I'm not letting you sort it, I said. I'm sorting it, and I'm starting by changing where my mail goes. Darren's smile didn't reach his eyes. You're being emotional, he said softly. You're accusing me in my own mother's kitchen. In Nan's kitchen, I corrected. His eyes flashed. There it was again, the ownership, the entitlement. You're going to regret making a scene, he said, still low enough that Nan could pretend she didn't hear. I held his gaze. I'm already living the regret, I said. It's got my name on it. When I left, Darren followed me to the front garden. The air smelled like rain. He kept his voice friendly in case a neighbor listened. Come on, he said. Let's not do this. You'll ruin your own life if you keep pushing. You'll end up with marks on your record, not me. The way he said not me made my stomach flip. It wasn't a comfort. It was a promise. Is that a threat? I asked, and I hated how my voice trembled. He smiled like I was being silly. It's advice, he said. Go back to college. Let adults deal with adult problems. Then he leaned closer, and for a second, his voice dropped into something only I could hear. You have no idea what you're messing with, he murmured, and no one is going to pick you over me. I got in Sophie's car because she'd insisted on driving me, and as we pulled away, I looked back and saw Darren standing there, hands in his pockets, watching like he'd just watched a child wander toward traffic. Sophie waited until we were a few streets away. He did it, she said. I stared out of the window at the gray houses sliding past. Yes, I said, and it felt like swallowing glass. The next weeks were a blur of forms and calls, but it wasn't just admin. It was a war Darren didn't know I was preparing. I started by filing an action fraud report properly, with dates, addresses, account numbers, everything I'd gathered. Then I registered for protective measures, got my credit files from all 3 agencies, and placed a notice of correction. I sent subject access requests to lenders, asking for application details, IP addresses if they had them, copies of signatures, the phone numbers used. Every time I wrote my name on a form that said victim of fraud, my stomach twisted because it felt like I was accusing my own blood out loud. But every time I heard Darren's voice in my head saying, "No one will pick you over me," I wrote faster. Then a letter came to my Nan's house again, despite me changing my address on everything I could. Nan rang, angry now. "You said you sorted it," she snapped, and I knew she was talking to Darren because her anger didn't have anywhere else to go. Darren rang me that night, furious in a way I'd never heard. "Why are you changing things?" he demanded. "Why are you making calls? Do you want to bring bailiffs to your Nan's door?" "My Nan's door?" I repeated, and I felt my fear turn into something sharper. Why would bailiffs be at Nan's door unless the accounts were linked there on purpose? He went quiet. Then he did what he always did when cornered. He attacked my character. "You're spiraling," he said. "You always do this. You get fixated and you ruin everything. Your mother did the same. She'd decide someone was against her and she'd burn the whole house down." I sat on my bed, phone pressed to my ear, and for a second his words landed. For a second I wondered if I was being dramatic, if grief had warped me, if I was making a villain out of the one person who'd stayed. Then I looked at the screenshot of his text. "Don't upset your Nan. Let me handle it." And I realized something else. If he was innocent, he'd be helping me gather evidence, not trying to stop me. So I changed tactics. I stopped challenging him directly. I became small again, on purpose. "I'm just scared," I told him, letting my voice wobble. "I don't know what I'm doing." His tone softened immediately, like a switch. "That's why you need me," he said. "I do," I whispered, and I hated myself for saying it, but I needed him to believe it, because I needed him to get comfortable. Over the next few days, I replied to his messages politely. I told him I was taking a step back. I told Nan I was letting Darren help. I let him think he'd put me back in my place, and then I set my trap. Quietly, legally, with nothing but paperwork. I filed for Royal Mail redirection from my old address history where I could. I updated my electoral registration. I changed my bank security. I set up a new email and made sure it wasn't connected to anything Darren knew. I told lenders to only communicate with me via that email and my current address. I asked for copies of applications, not summaries. It took time, but documents started landing like snow. One lender sent me a scanned application form with my name typed neatly, my date of birth correct, my NI number correct, and a mobile number I didn't recognize. But the signature was my name, written in a way that looked like mine if you'd only seen it once. It had the right loops, the right slant, but it hesitated in the wrong places, like someone was copying a style instead of signing as themselves. I stared at it until my eyes stung. Then another envelope came, this one from a phone company. It included a delivery record for the SIM card, delivered to Darren's address, signed for by Darren. He hadn't even bothered to hide that part. My hands went cold, then hot. My vision sharpened like I'd been underwater and suddenly surfaced. I took photos of everything. I saved PDFs in multiple places. I emailed copies to Sophie. I sent a quiet message to Leah. "Are you free for a call? It's about Darren." Leah called immediately. "What's he done?" she asked. No hello, no warm-up, just straight to the truth. I told her, and the silence on the other end wasn't disbelief. It was recognition. "Okay," Leah said finally. "I need you to listen to me. He did something similar to me with a catalog account when I was 19. It wasn't huge, so I paid it just to shut it up. He told me it was a mistake. He made me feel stupid. My mouth went dry. Why didn't you tell anyone? Leah laughed, bitter. Because he was helping Nan. Because he was the good one. Because I didn't want to be the one who ruined Christmas. The words hit me like a door opening. It wasn't just me. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't the family's problem child. Darren was the problem, and we'd been trained to protect him. What do we do? I asked, and I heard how young I sounded. Leah's voice turned hard. We stop protecting him, she said, and we do it properly, with proof. That night, I went through my old things at Nan's while she was out, because I couldn't trust Darren not to take anything if he got wind of it. In a shoebox of school certificates and Mum's old birthday cards, I found a thin envelope labeled Child Trust Fund. My name. My address from years ago. A letter saying the account had been accessed and transferred when I turned 18. I hadn't transferred anything. My heart pounded as I opened it. The letter was old, but the words made me feel sick. It listed a balance that should have been there, a small amount, not life-changing, but mine. Then it confirmed a withdrawal, signed by me, except it wasn't. I sat on Nan's bed, holding that letter like it was radioactive, and I realized Darren hadn't started using my name when I turned 18. He'd been waiting for the moment my name became useful. He'd been planning. When Nan got home, she found me in the kitchen, the letter in front of me. "What's that?" she asked, frowning. I looked up, and my throat tightened. "Nan," I said softly, "did you ever see me withdraw my trust fund?" Nan blinked like she didn't understand the question. "Trust fund?" she repeated, as if the words belonged to rich people and didn't fit our lives. "The child trust fund Mum set up," I said. "Did you ever see me sign anything?" Nan's face drained of color. "Darren sorted that," she whispered. "He said it went toward your laptop for college and your deposit." I laughed, sharp and broken. "Nan, Sophie bought me this laptop on finance and I'm paying her back. My deposit was 300 quid from my part-time job." Nan sat slowly at the table, hands trembling. "No," she said. "No, Darren wouldn't." "He did," I said, and I slid the letter toward her. "Look." Nan's eyes moved over the page. I watched her reading, watched her mind fighting against it. She'd lost a daughter, she'd nearly lost a granddaughter, and Darren had been the one constant. If Darren was a thief, then what had she been clinging to all these years? Her eyes filled with tears. "Why would he do this?" she whispered. And there it was, the question I'd been circling. Why? Because he could, I wanted to say. Because he liked the power. Because he thought I owed him for raising me. Because he didn't see me as a person, only as a resource. But I didn't know which answer was true yet. 2 days later, Darren showed up at my college accommodation without warning. Sophie opened the door and blocked him automatically, like a guard dog. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Darren smiled at her like she was nothing. "I'm family," he said. "I'm here for Ava." I stepped into the hallway. "You can't just turn up." He looked at me, eyes scanning my face, searching for what I knew. "Your Nan called me," he said. "She said you've been upsetting her, showing her letters, making accusations." I swallowed. "They're not accusations," I said. "They're documents." His smile vanished. "You think you're clever," he said quietly. "You think because you've got a few bits of paper, you can drag my name through mud." "You dragged my name," I replied, and my voice surprised me with how steady it was. He stared at me for a long second. Then he did something that made my skin crawl. He softened again. "Ava," he said, stepping closer, lowering his voice like he was telling me a secret. "Listen to me. I did what I had to do. Do you think money fell out of the sky when your mum got sick? Do you think the council helped? Do you think your dad sent a penny? My chest tightened at the mention of Dad, a ghost we never spoke of. I kept a roof over your head, Darren continued. I fed you. I paid for your school uniforms. I did that. Me. And no one thanked me. I blinked, stunned, not denial, not even pretending, just justification. You stole from me, I whispered. He shrugged, almost bored. I borrowed, he corrected, and I would have paid it back once things calmed down. But you had to go running to police like some victim. I am a victim, I said, and my voice shook now, anger and pain tangled together. You used my identity. Darren's eyes hardened. Careful, he warned. You push this and you'll lose your family. Nan will pick me. Everyone will, because they need me. Sophie stepped forward. Get out, she said, voice flat. Darren ignored her. He looked at me like he was memorizing my face. You want the truth? He said. Fine. Truth is, you were always going to be a mess. Like your mum. I tried to stop it. I tried to make you tougher. But you're soft. You think the world owes you a clean slate. He leaned in slightly. And if you go through with this, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of girl you really are. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? He smiled, small and cruel. Use your imagination, he said. Then he walked away like he'd won. After he left, Sophie locked the door and leaned back against it. Leah arrived 20 minutes later because I'd texted her a single word. Now. I told them everything Darren said, every detail, and Leah's face stayed hard. He's trying to scare you into silence, Leah said, because if you stay quiet, he gets to keep the story. If you speak, you change it. But he's right about one thing, I whispered. Nan might pick him. Leah's eyes softened, just a fraction. Then we make it so Nan doesn't have to choose, she said. We make it so the choice is made by consequences. That became the center of my revenge. Not screaming, not dramatic scenes, consequences. I met with citizens' advice, and for the first time I heard someone say the words like they were solid ground. You are not liable for debts you did not take out, but you need to act quickly and keep records. I contacted CIFAS and put a protective registration on my name. I filed disputes with each lender. I gave them the SIM delivery record, the forged signature, the addresses, the timeline. I told them I suspected a family member and that I would cooperate fully with investigation. Then DS Priya Shah called me. Her voice was calm, brisk. Ava Morgan, she said. I'm with the Economic Crime Unit. We've reviewed your report and some linked cases. I want to ask you a few questions. Linked cases. My heart jumped. Linked to what? To the addresses you mentioned, she said. To a pattern, and to a name that's come up before. I swallowed. Darren Morgan? There was a pause, and I could almost hear her choosing her words carefully. Tell me about your relationship with him, she said. So I did. I told her about being raised in his shadow, about trust, about the way he always positioned himself as the helper. I told her about the Child Trust Fund letter. I told her about the visit to my accommodation and the way he slipped from justification to threat like it was natural. DS Shah listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, I'm going to be honest with you. People like this rarely do it once. They do it because it works. They do it because families protect them. You're doing the right thing by documenting everything. My eyes burned. But how do I prove it's him? I asked. He's careful with people. He's been preparing them to think I'm the problem. Then we don't fight opinions, DS Shah replied. We fight facts. Over the next month, my life became evidence. Every letter, every email, every call log, every bank statement. I kept a timeline in my notes app. I recorded conversations when legal and when it was for my protection, and I saved them like my future depended on them, because it did. Then came the twist that made my blood go cold. One lender sent a file showing the application had been made online from an IP address registered to Darren's home internet. It was right there in black and white, hidden in a technical report most people wouldn't know to ask for. I stared at it for a long time, like if I looked long enough it might change into something else. It didn't. I sent it to D.S. Shaw, and the next day, Nan rang me crying so hard I could barely understand her. "He's done it again," she sobbed. "He's taken a loan. In your name. A man called, asking for you, and when I said you don't live here, he got nasty. He said bailiffs. He said court." My body went icy. "Nan, listen to me," I said, forcing my voice into calm. "Did Darren see the letter?" There was a long pause. "Yes," Nan whispered. "He grabbed it out of my hand." Of course he did. He'd panicked. He'd tried to outrun the consequences by doubling down. And that was the moment my revenge shifted from gathering proof to springing the trap. I told D.S. Shaw everything. The new loan attempt, the call, the fact Darren had intercepted mail again. D.S. Shaw's voice sharpened. "Do not confront him," she said. "Do not warn him. Let him continue." The thought made me sick. Let him continue while my name burned on paper. But I understood what she meant. If Darren kept doing it after I'd already reported fraud, after warnings, after investigations, it stopped looking like confusion and started looking like intent. So I played my part. I acted scared with Darren again. I called him, voice small. "Nan said someone called about bailiffs," I said. "I'm freaking out." Darren sighed, heavy, like I was exhausting him. "Because you keep stirring it," he snapped. "I told you I'd sort it." "What do I do?" I asked, letting my voice wobble. "You need to stop talking to police," he said quickly. "Stop giving statements. Tell them you got confused. Tell them you must have applied and forgot. You young people do that, with apps and stuff. You click things." My stomach turned. "But that's lying," I whispered. "It's cleaning up your mess," he corrected. "If you don't, you'll ruin all of us. Do you want your Nan having bailiffs at the door? Do you want her heart giving out because you can't keep your mouth shut?" He always knew exactly where to press. Nan, guilt, responsibility. I swallowed hard. "Okay," I said. "Okay, I'll do what you say." "Good girl," Darren said instantly, the satisfaction in his voice slipping through. "I'll come by tomorrow. We'll sort the rest." I ended the call and sat there shaking, not from fear this time, but from rage. Good girl, like I was a dog he'd trained. The next day, Darren went to Nan's house, confident again, ready to control the narrative. Nan later told me he made tea, kissed her cheek, and sat down with a folder of his own, as if he was the one being wronged. What Darren didn't know was that D.S. Shaw already had enough to move. They weren't waiting for a confession. They were waiting for the cleanest moment. That moment came quicker than I expected. Because Darren, in his panic, made one mistake. He used his own phone number on one of the applications, the same number he'd used for years, the one Nan had saved under Our Darren. The lender called it to verify details, and Nan answered. She told me later that when the woman on the line asked for Ava, Nan felt something break inside her, because she knew then, with a certainty that didn't need proof, that Darren had been lying. Nan asked the woman to repeat the phone number on the application. It was Darren's. Nan hung up and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the family photos on the wall like they belonged to strangers. When Darren came back into the room, Nan didn't yell. She didn't throw anything. She just said, "Why is your number on my granddaughter's loan?" Darren tried to laugh it off, tried to charm his way out, tried to say it was a mistake. Nan looked him in the eye and said, "You've been using her name." Darren's face changed. The friendly mask dropped so fast it was almost frightening. His voice turned sharp. Don't start, he hissed. Not you too. Nan told him to leave. He didn't. He told her she was being manipulated by me. He told her I was turning everyone against him. He said he deserved the money after everything he'd done. He said I was ungrateful, that Mum would be ashamed of me, that I was trying to ruin him because I needed attention. And then, because Darren couldn't stand losing control, he said the one thing he should never have said. Without me, you'd both be nothing, he snapped. Nan slapped him, not hard, not dramatic, but it was enough to shock him into silence. Then she pointed at the door with a shaking hand. Get out of my house, she said, voice quiet and deadly. And don't call me your mother again. That evening, Nan rang me. Her voice sounded older. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to believe it. I closed my eyes and felt tears slide down my face. I know, I whispered. He made it hard to. Nan took a breath. What do we do now? My revenge had never been about humiliating Nan. It had never been about making her suffer. It was about making Darren face the truth he'd been avoiding his whole life. We let the consequences happen, I said softly. We tell the police everything, together. 2 days later, D.S. Shaw and another officer went to Darren's address. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I'd spent too long being trapped in Darren's presence, shrinking around him, trying to predict his moods. I didn't want the satisfaction of watching him panic. I wanted the safety of distance. But Sophie was with me when D.S. Shaw called. We've executed a search, she said. We've seized devices, documents, and correspondence. There will be an interview under caution. My body went light, like my bones were hollow. Is he denying it? I asked. D.S. Shaw's voice stayed even. He says you gave him permission, she replied. He says you asked him to help you build credit. I laughed, a shaky sound. Of course he does. We expected that, D.S. Shaw said, but we also found printed applications with handwriting notes. We found envelopes addressed to you opened at his address. And we found records related to other identities. Other identities. Leah wasn't the only one. In the weeks that followed, the family exploded in slow motion. At first, people didn't know what to say. They went quiet. They avoided calls. They acted like the scandal was contagious. Some of my aunties looked at me like I'd caused it, like Darren's choices were somehow my fault for speaking up. Then the first cousin rang me and said, he did it to me too, and started crying. Then another. Then an auntie admitted she'd once let Darren handle her benefits paperwork and later couldn't understand why she had an overpayment debt. The pattern unfolded like a long, ugly scroll. Darren had been living off trust the way some people live off wages. And the worst part was realizing how many times we'd all felt a weird little sting of confusion in our lives and then ignored it because Darren had a tidy explanation. He'd trained us to doubt ourselves. The day Darren was formally charged, Nan asked me to come over. She didn't want to be alone, she said. She wanted the house full of something good. When I arrived, she had Mum's photo on the table. A fresh cup of tea beside it, like Mum might come in and drink it. Nan held my hand and said, I keep thinking about all those times he called you irresponsible. My jaw clenched. He was projecting, I said. Nan nodded slowly. He made me believe you'd end up like your father, she whispered, and the fact she said father out loud made the room feel colder. I blinked. Why would he say that? I asked. Nan's eyes filled. Because your father leaving made Darren feel powerful, she said, voice shaking. Darren always liked being the one who stayed, the one we needed. The words settled in me in a new way. Darren didn't just want money. He wanted to be necessary. He wanted to be the hero and the victim and the judge, all at once. The court process took months. It was paperwork and waiting and anxiety, and sometimes I'd wake up in the night convinced my life was ruined permanently, that no matter what anyone decided, my credit would stay stained. My name would always feel risky in my own mouth. But little by little, things changed. Lenders began closing fraudulent accounts and removing markers once they verified evidence. My credit files updated. The red words on letters stopped. I learned how much power there is in simply not being silent. And Darren, for the first time, couldn't talk his way out. Because in court, charm is just noise if the facts don't match. The final twist came from Darren himself. On the day he was sentenced, he tried to look at me as he was led out, like he could still control the story with a glance. His eyes weren't apologetic. They were angry, as if I'd stolen something from him, as if I'd committed the real crime by refusing to carry his shame. Later, Nan told me Darren had tried to send her a letter from custody. It was pages long, full of self-pity, full of blame. He wrote that I'd turned the family against him. He wrote that I'd ruined his life over mistakes. Nan didn't finish it. She burned it in the sink, quietly, like she was burning a spell. Darren faced consequences that weren't just legal. He lost his job. He lost access to people's lives. People stopped answering his calls. Family members who once swore he was a saint started comparing notes, and the picture they built wasn't flattering. The man who'd needed to be admired was finally seen clearly, and I won't pretend that felt good all the time. Some nights I still felt sick with guilt, like I'd broken something sacred, like family was a glass thing and I'd smashed it. But then I'd remember standing in my hallway while 2 officers read out debts in my name. I'd remember Darren's voice telling me no one would pick me over him, and I'd remember what D.S. Shaw said, "We don't fight opinions, we fight facts." The day my credit file finally showed clean, I sat in my room and just stared at the screen for a long time. Not because numbers on a report were my whole life, but because those numbers had been used as a leash. They'd been used to make me feel like I'd never escape the version of me Darren created. I rang Nan and told her, and she cried, relieved. Then she said something I'll never forget. "He always said you were soft," she whispered. "But you were the strongest one in this whole family. You were the only one who stopped him." After everything, I didn't feel like a hero. I felt tired. I felt older than 19. I felt like I'd been living inside someone else's story and finally got the pen back. I wish I could tell you Darren learned something. I wish I could say he came to me and admitted it all and apologized like a human being. He didn't. Even at the end, he clung to his excuses, his resentment, his belief that he was owed. But that's the thing about revenge when you do it legally, carefully, piece by piece. It doesn't need the villain's permission. It doesn't need their confession. It just needs the truth, documented, repeated, and held up to the light until everyone can see it. And now, when someone says my name, it sounds like me again.